It's like dial-up. It's got to boot up.
All right. Hey, folks, and good morning, and welcome back to today's episode of 747 Conversations. It's your host, Chris Schembra, broadcasting live from beautiful New York City, our makeshift studio in our apartment. And hope y'all are staying safe and healthy out there today. Broadcasting live from Harlem, New York, our dear friend Neal Ludevig. Welcome to 747 Conversations.
Hello, glad to be here.
Now, Neal is a producer, a curator, a storyteller, founder of multiple companies, mostly around the food and community space. Years ago, as the helping to launch Beyond Better Foods, which became one of the fastest growing food companies in the country, founder and producer of the Harlem Arts Festival, which has served tens of thousands of attendees, founder of the Astor Party, an ongoing jam session, Fed Sessions, a conversation dinner series, and now CEO of Moon31, where he's really helping make storytelling and community activism a far friendlier and more engaging space to be in. So welcome to the conversation, Neal. We have a lot of things in common. For instance, many people, when they try to describe us, they say, wait, what do we say? Which things are you doing now? There's so many different things on the plate, but it's going to be a wonderful conversation about food, community, and art. The first question we ask every podcast episode is, or every LinkedIn Live episode is, if you could give credit or thanks to one person in your life that you don't give enough credit or thanks to, who would that be?
Boy, I should have known that I would be asked this question again. I think when we had last spoken quite some time ago, that person, he was the first person that came to my mind. Actually, it was my brother. Yeah, I think actually even through this time, like seeing how he's navigating this and kind of like calm, cool, collectedly. Yeah, he's definitely the person that I've definitely never on any public forum said that. So this feels appropriate to say for sure.
So
a good time as any.
Calm, cool, collected. When you are COO of a fast-growing company, when you are putting on festivals with tens of thousands of attendees, would people say Neal is calm, cool, and collected? Is that your leadership style, or is it something different?
I hope so. I think what you kind of is external facing is often what is not on the inside. So I think in the event space, I mean, so much is thrown at you, last minute. That is always, the challenge. I would say my leadership style is very group oriented. So I'm checking with everyone saying, great, like, are we on board with this? Let's make a collective decision. And it's kind of taking a moment, digesting the information, talking about it with the team, and then coming to a decision and moving forward. I think that's a big thing for me. And I think the other one, and I think that kind of reinforces it, is having for each person to kind of have self-autonomy. There was a really inspirational person, or there is a really inspirational person that gave me a good piece of advice. Dave Geis. He's the founder of the Center for Social Innovation. Super incredible person. I would also say is cool, calm, and collected for sure. But he had mentioned that a great way to kind of challenge people to rise to the occasion is letting them know that if anyone ever has a question for you, is stuck on something, they should only come to you with 3 potential solutions for it and 2 recommendations on what to do. As a means of, and I think he even said it was like part of the 80-20 rule, that 80% of the time should be spent solving problems and 20% of the time should be identifying them. And the only time that you're really talking to them and coming to him as like a head person is if when you're stuck is after again, the 3 potential solutions and 2 recommendations. And so that's kind of a little bit where the style, it's like, great, like, have you exhausted every resource? Are you doing as much as you can? So I'm really only come faced with the hard decisions where it's a little bit okay not to be as cool, calm, and collected, because they're tough decisions,
It's it's interesting. You talk about the 80-20 rule and how how leaders can give their team the opportunities to solve challenges. It reminds me of what Google does. Google gives full autonomy with it's called like Google Time, or they give their employees time per week to work on things not related to the normal challenges they solve. They give autonomous time for you to dream up a new challenge, work on a different team, do something completely unrelated to your job duties. And that's how you drive innovation. So let's back up to, I want to hear the origination story. You have built several companies revolved around community building, storytelling, and food. How did you get your start?
My start, I've been around the block. I mean, I would say if we're talking about music and community building, I would say that's probably the place where it first began. I've been a musician my whole life. Everyone in my family plays music and either dances or performs. So it's deeply embedded. I play a few instruments, the sax, the guitar, the piano. I was an a cappella nerd for a little bit as well. But yeah, I actually played professionally in a group way back in college. We played at South by Southwest, and they won a huge competition, like Spin Magazine, and beat out 5,000 other bands. And Hot Pursuit, it was kind of like college fun time, and we had the classic MTV breakup. It was great. But yeah, I would say like the origin story of at least like into community building and music. I lived abroad. I actually taught English and music. And when I came back to the States, so I lived in South Korea, but came back to New York City and started working at a booking agency, actually through an a cappella connection. That was really where kind of jazz and hip hop, and I just started working with some of the most incredible artists out there. And I was booking them, I was tour managing them, we were helping manage them for some. I mean, Robert Glasper, Jose James, Chris Dave, Paquito de Rivera, Pharoah Sanders. I mean, they are jazz legends. I mean, some of the biggest names, multi-Grammy award-winning people. And yeah, I was this kind of little person that was just happy to go to any show or concert. And at the time, I was living in Harlem. And a lot of these guys either lived in Harlem or were near Harlem, and I would just have to go downtown. I'd have to go to Brooklyn, or I'd be like touring with them, but I would never do it like in my own community. And like, we've got the Apollo, we've got Harlem Stage, we've got Aaron Davis Hall, we've got Marcus Garvey Park has one of the largest I think it's the second largest outdoor amphitheater in New York City after the Delacorte, where they do Shakespeare in the Park. And it was unused. I mean, really at the time. And so I think that's kind of where it started. A close friend of mine. So whereas my background was in music, her background was in theater. She worked on a lot of peace, conflict resolution, theatrical work. And she had her name is JJ Alfar. She had, kind of started brainstorming this idea, and the amphitheater was being renovated really for the first time in years. 50 plus years. I mean, it was dilapidated completely. And so, yeah, we kind of put our heads together, and then I brought in a third person who also lived in Harlem, but her background was in dance. And all of us felt this kind of same like yearning for more and thinking like, okay, like what resources do we have? Can we do this? Should we do this? And yeah, that's kind of, it was really born out of a need, out of wanting to go and see things a little bit closer. Because it's like, why am I going to Europe to seeing somebody that lives down the street from me? Like, why am I have to travel to Brooklyn or this or that? And it was just, so it was just born out of like a common sense thought, or what felt like common sense. I mean, just be like, heck yeah, let's do this. So I think that's at least where the community building and the music came from. And yeah, I think there was a double life at the same time, because that was just we didn't know what we were doing at that time. I mean, we launched a Kickstarter. We were trying to like balance other jobs. And at the same time, when that kind of, even like right around its first year, like it just, the time became crazy. And that's actually when I started Beyond Better Foods with Mike Shoretz.
Mm-hmm.
I was a college buddy. So I was like literally juggling. It was like 9 to 9 every single day. And then I'd go home and then I'd work until like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning on, you know, the other project. And so it was like that for a while.
It sounded like you were learning how to balance commerce and art at the same time in a double life. How important is it for people to either find something they're passionate about and quit their day to day, or find something they're passionate about that sustains yourself so that you can still work in your day to day? What are your thoughts on that?
I have always been a proponent of that first option of finding what you love and doing it. I feel like it's just cutting out the middleman. And it's the perpetual argument with the parents. My parents are immigrants, and they kind of absolutely, they cut. You've got family and close family friends that, I mean, they came here with nothing. I mean, my mom was a refugee, and pretty much, and yeah, and I mean, both my dad, I mean, they had not a dollar to their name, and they had to figure it out and learn a skill and learn English and do all that stuff. And so it was finding a job that, whatever job could make it work. I am absolutely of a privileged mindset that I'm like, sure, I can try this and I'll see if I can make it work. And the amount of opportunities that have been handed in that sense, to allow me this mindset is remarkable. I think, but when I explain it to them, they kind of, I say, their mentality has very much been, we did this so that you could do this for the next, for your family and your generation. I actually respond and say, actually, like, you did this so I could have the freedom to make that choice. And it's an important distinction. But I think that first option feels right, because ultimately I think you'll do a better job and you'll feel better in every single regard. Yeah.
You mentioned a privileged mindset, and you are advocating on behalf of a community, Harlem, and a group of individuals, artists, who may not come from a privileged mindset upbringing. And what I don't mean to say is whether or not they come from a privileged or not privileged upbringing, but the mindset of abundance or scarcity. When you're now in your newest company, part of your services is talent management and working with some of the greatest artists out there. How do you develop an abundance mindset in an artist when they're used to fighting for scraps with their art every step of the way to get here?
Ooh, that's a tough question. I should have known that would the tough questions on the podcast. I wish there was a simple answer to kind of, to say, great, like, you do this. I actually think a big part, one of the biggest challenges that, and things actually in the past few years that I've been working on, is actually less of trying to shift people's mindset, right? You have an impact on, actually a close friend of mine, he was actually giving me some advice. He's like, you have the power to influence people, but you don't have the power to change outcomes. And I think there's a book that I read that, a very popular book, Think and Grow Rich, which I think we've even spoken about at some point. Napoleon Hill. I mean, it really kind of influenced a lot. But who you choose to surround yourself and how you spend your time is really, really impacts everything from your mindset, whether it's abundance, whether it's scarcity. I think, I think that's kind of more than trying to find people that are not in that mindset. It's finding people that are in an abundance mindset and thinking that the people that are willing and ready to change, they will naturally gravitate towards that. And there was an analogy that I think I actually also mentioned at one point to you. It's sort of like, it's sort of like baking pie, and there was a, oh, what was it? It was the influencer's dinner, and this guy was talking about how he gets. I think his name is John Levy,
Ah,
and
dear friend of mine.
yeah. So he talked. I always was like a big fan and kind of looking, and I'd heard about it, and he talks about, really some amazing people have come through this thing, from Questlove to Bill Nye, the science guy, Nora Jones, and this. And there was an interview asking him, how did he get all these people to come there? And he said, you have to give unconditionally. It's this kind of this mindset of putting it out there and not having any expectation. And when you do that, the people that are like all the most incredible people in the world, they are giving unconditionally. In some way, they're giving wholly into themselves. They are believing that there's enough of a mindset of abundance. They're kind of pushing it out there. I think that they gravitate towards that. And the way that I've internalized it, it's like if I'm giving out free pie, right? Some people are going to look at this, what I'm doing, and think, "Holy crap, free pie! Let me like go snag a slice before it runs out and kind of gobble it up." And other people are going to be saying, "Wait, why are you? What's up with this pie stuff? What are you doing? Why are you doing that?" And maybe they'll say, "I want to help you make some pie," or "I want to make you like I've got some cookies. I want to make a dessert platter and share that with you." But I think the job that or what's most impacted my life, and to answer your question about changing mindsets, it's less about changing and more about being able to discern who are the people in it for the free pie and who are the bakers, who wants to bake with you. And I think that's been the biggest thing, not trying to necessarily find people and doing as best of a job as I can to see who are the people that are on the same wavelength as me and like will be a little bit crazy. All the best people are crazy, a little bit. And so you got to like, who's going to be crazy with you and not, and push each other forward.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right. As they say, rising tides lift all boats.
Yeah. Ooh, that's a good one.
And so the interesting part is when you are in a time of crisis, in a time of need, who you invest in when times are tough will ultimately become your best advocates when times are good.
Mm-hmm.
Because loyalty is cheaper than acquisition. And when you can invest and hold on to the relationships that you have and take care of others when times are bad, you'll reap rewards in the long run times 50. Our buddy John Rulin is the founder of a company called Giftology, and he helps the largest companies in the world with their gift-giving strategies. If a company wants to give a gift, don't put your logo on it and give your mug to a client. No, give them something thoughtful that's useful for their life, for their family, for their kitchen, for their kids, that reminds them of you. But what's so important that you're mentioning is the what giving does to help weed out who are the takers in your life or who are the foot soldiers that will be along for the ride. As Adam Grant, one of the the great business authors, the youngest tenured professor in the history of the Wharton School of Business, the most popular professor in the history of the Wharton School of Business, he wrote a book called Give and Take, and he found that people can really be categorized in three ways: givers, takers, or matchers. And he studied 2,600, I believe, sales professionals on what made them successful. Were they a giver? Were they a taker? Or were they a matcher? And the matchers were more successful than the takers. The givers were split. The givers were either the least successful or the most successful.
I heard about this, yeah.
Uh-huh. And so it's interesting that you use giving as the filter to figure out who's in it to win it with you or who's just a bump on the log looking for a free handout. And that's pretty cool. So thanks for sharing that story, that analogy. Well, the next question I have is to move into kind of present day. Here we are. Your community activism revolves a lot on building in-person experiences and supporting local artists and storytellers. How have you had to pivot in this time of virtual?
Well, I actually just wrote an article a little bit about this on my website, where r- kind of thinking about this notion that crisis actually fosters innovation, and very much so. And I think it's actually it's been a combination of a pivot, but also completely seeing this as an opportunity. This pandemic, this crisis, this global situation that we're in is absolutely a wake up call. And I think hopefully it is enough of a wake up call to cement in certain ideologies and necessities. I mean, we're seeing things in the environmental sustainability space, we're seeing stuff in the live entertainment, in the art space. Um, I think we're seeing everyone kind of pivot and change and move and shift. And for me, this is exactly that option of taking a moment to digest what's going on and actually using this to plan the next step. Because I mean, I mentioned before, and you're someone who definitely can relate. When you've got one project or another, or one dinner and kind of nonstop, you often don't get a moment to actually digest what has just happened and process it, and then build on it. So I think the first thing is this larger situation has allowed me to kind of sit, to write, to work, to plan out my next steps, which is a good thing. It's something that I didn't have enough time before, and I'm reading and I'm writing more, and I'm learning Spanish, and I'm writing film concepts, and I think all of those things are kind of building towards what I think will be after this, right? Like the world will forever be different afterwards. And, this is your children's children are going to be referring to this as like, wow, like, I can't believe that happened. I was even thinking like Burning Man is going to have its first virtual year. People are going to be referring like, you went to the virtual one? Like, it's, who knows? So I think that's outside of the pivot. I mean, I'm just kind of accepting it. And I think that's that was a mindset pivot that needs to, as opposed to trying to continue on what I was doing, just take a step back and sit and look and observe.
Mm-hmm.
In the art space, there's a lot of innovation happening. I mean, you see, DJ battles on Instagram Live. You're seeing, I mean, online concerts happening through the roof. People sharing content more than ever before. I think part of it is creating space because people are craving connectivity. But yeah, I'm working on a concept actually with the Future X Sounds, and we've got some things brewing about almost like a sharing and calling your, if you can think of like, the ice bucket challenge kind of concept, but like calling out your next innovator and partner and musician to kind of really make it a collaborative process. I mean, people are reaching out, I think, individually, but getting it in real time is something that, I think it's exciting. I mean, technology is definitely racing now to catch up with people's needs. So I think that's also going to be the intersection of how people are pivoting. Yeah.
I mean, if you look at history, our world has survived great challenges like this before, and time again, usually leads to a tremendous amount of creativity and innovation. Take the Dark Ages, the bubonic plague, which wiped out half of a continent of Europe. What followed the Dark Ages? The Renaissance.
Yeah.
So
what goes up must come down, and vice versa.
So it's going to be ugly for a little bit, but I think you're right. If you take the time to reconnect with yourself and understand your value, your priorities, your vision, your leadership style, your abilities to give gifts to the world. I mean, it's great. Just last night at one of our virtual dinners, we had a 15-year-old girl that came to the dinner. Actually, my girlfriend's little baby sister. She's one of 9. And when she was giving credit and thanks, she gave credit and thanks to a mentor, a role model of hers. And she said that her role model had taught her how to be present.
Mm.
And you got a 15-year-old saying that. And at the same time, an older attendee, not an old attendee, but older than a 15-year-old, gave credit and thanks to her nieces who taught her how to be present.
Mm.
And so you have multiple generations talking about the importance of being in the moment and being present. And we can finally accept those gifts, and we can finally give ourselves the time to step into that. So it's a pretty neat thing. Well, the final question I have for you today, Neal, is you've had your work covered by all the biggest publications, New York Times, Rolling Stone, Spin Magazine, you name it. If they could tell your story in 5 years about what you've done today in a short 2 minutes, what would they say?
Oh, if they could tell my story about what I've done today.
Values, adjectives, more than actions.
I think that, so one of the things that, okay. So for Moon31, one of the ways that I've been operating, it actually took a long time to kind of think how it was going to work. I wanted to keep some kind of direction for it that would allow different kinds of projects and things to still fall under that umbrella it could be from film to TV to management to whatever. And the way that I essentially set it up was that all of the work had to fall underneath one of 5 values: environmental sustainability, racial equity, gender equality, LGBT advocacy, reducing gun violence, one of those things. And if it didn't fall under it, I wasn't interested in it. And that's like the sort of first filter. Mm-hmm. And then the second filter was, is this project that I'm doing one of 3 things for those causes? Is it broadly raising awareness? Is it invoking some kind of systemic change? Or is it tangibly impacting positively people right in front of my eyes? 50 people or whatever it is, something where I can see real change happening. And if it wasn't doing one of those things, it wasn't something that I'm interested in. And I think if one of those outlets was talking about how I've kind of, my impact in my work, I think I would want them, or I would hope that they would say something that I've like cemented a shift in a mindset of how companies should operate.
I like it.
So that what is driving companies are values in a, much more than money. Right. And that it really is that kind of checklist, and that like, here is a company that's operating from a different space. And everything that I'm doing is kind of operating from that space. So I think that would be pretty cool for them to kind of talk about, and, see like other companies are looking towards these kinds of mindsets. Because even, just much more value-driven stuff. Even Harlem Arts Festival, that was the first one of really the only companies that I know that was completely community-centric. All of the artists were chosen through a democratic process by a committee made up and comprised of individuals from that community that helped build the artistic and cultural landscape of it. And that also was, what was driving that company, what was driving that nonprofit really, was different, and it was completely value-driven. So I think that, that's where it would be, that there's like cementing a shift. And there's no way that I could ever say that I'm pioneering it, but that maybe that success of different things that I'm doing illustrates the incredible value it has, the incredible success that can be garnered, which is a little bit of a backwards mentality, by being driven by your values.
Yeah.
Right.
Success.
And it's the paradox, right? That kind of exists in Buddhism, that, you're trying to achieve bliss, but if you try to, if the goal is to achieve bliss, you'll never get it. Kind of in that way.
I like it.
Yeah.
I like it. What a phenomenal philosophy, and I can't wait to read that article.
Me too.
Very soon, even if you have to write it. But well, folks, thanks for tuning in, and big thanks to Neal for being with us here today. If you'd like to reach out to him, he's tagged in the description of this LinkedIn Live episode. So thank you, Neal, for sharing your values, your stories, and your vision for the future of how we can come together as a community. It's been phenomenal having you on. To all our attendees or listeners out there, please keep tuning in. Please keep supporting your local community. Take activism. If you heard something today that you agreed with, act on it. Taking that first step is sometimes all you need, and let the momentum continue from there. So keep tuning in for more inspirational conversations with our world's great leaders. Hope y'all are having a phenomenal day on Earth. Remember, folks, it's your world. Go explore. Stay safe, and we'll see you next LinkedIn Live.